To be more precise, Millet hadn't read it. Millet knew nothing about the writer, nothing about the book, could not identify the book if it lay in a pile of other books, could not pick out the writer in a lineup of other writers. Irresistible, this lineup of offended writings: Socrates, Protagoras, Ovid, and the Juvenile, Radcliffe, Hall, Boris, Pasternak, D.H. Lawrence, a name that I cannot pronounce, Nabokov, all holding up their numbers for the mugshot, squinting in the flash bulb. But he knew other things. He knew that he, Millet, was a Paki, no matter where he came from, that he smelled of curry, had no sexual identity, took other people's jobs or had no jobs, or had no job and bumped off the state, or gave all the jobs to his relatives, that he could be a dentist or a shop owner or a curry shifter, but not a footballer or a filmmaker, that he should go back to his own country or stay here and earn his bloody keep, that he worshipped elephants and wore turbans, that no one who looked like Millet or spoke like Millet or felt like Millet was ever on the news unless they had recently been murdered. In short, he knew he had no face in this country, no voice in this country, until the week before last, when suddenly people like Millet were on every channel and every radio and every newspaper, and they were angry. And Millet recognized the anger, thought it recognized him, and grabbed it with both hands. Why, hello, Tube. Today we have White Teeth by Zadie Smith. If you like your own copy, you can use my affiliate link down below to bookshop.org, or if you use it to purchase this book or any book, you get an awesome book and extra cost to yourself. I get a little taste of the pie. It's a win-win. You can also support the channel by commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing, all that stuff. And finally, there are timestamps down below where you can jump around, skip around in this video if there's a section you do not like. I want to say first and foremost before we get into this isn't going to be a big rundown of the story and everything that happens and all this and that and the others. You know, if you're assigned this in school, first of all, you came to the wrong channel for that stuff, because I would just fail you. If you use anything that I say, you're going to fail. You're probably way smarter than I am. And also, this book has so much that goes on in this 400 and something odd pages, 440 some pages. You could talk about this book for 2 hours and forget to mention a bunch of other things that are important, and just there's just too much stuff that goes on in this book for a video of mine. Let's be real. So this is more of, if you've never heard of this book and you're, maybe I'll put it on your radar. Maybe it sounds like something you might like to go read, or, just kind of my overall quick thoughts about it. So that way, if you share in my tastes and I like it, then you will likely like it. If you don't share my tastes and I like it, then you probably won't like it, or vice versa. And jibbly jabbly. I don't know what I'm saying here. So, first, a little bit about Zadie Smith. This is coming off the interwebs, so hopefully everything that I've gathered is correct in all of its glory. And if not, I apologize, and let me know what's not correct. I can correct it for the next video. Zadie Smith is an award-winning British novelist, essayist, and short story writer, best known for her debut novel, White Teeth, which became an international bestseller when it was published in 2000, while she was still a student at Cambridge. Born in London in 1975, she has since become one of the most influential. I can't talk, and I'm reading from a script, and I can't read, so this is just one big of a mess. If you're new here, welcome to the Thunderdome, because it's just one big mess in here. Born in London in 1975, she has since become one of the most influential literary voices of her generation, celebrated for her sharp wit, cultural insights, and explorations of identity, race, family, and belonging. Sorry, headphone listeners. Her major works include On Beauty, which won the Orange Prize for Fiction. Had no idea what that is, but it sounds prestigious. NW, Swing Time, and most recently, The Fraud. Beyond fiction, Smith is also a prolific essayist whose nonfiction appears in publications like The New Yorker and the New York Review of Books. She has been elected a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and twice named one of Granta's Best Young British Novelists. Again, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea if I pronounced it right. I'm guessing I didn't, but it sounds prestigious. Smith currently teaches creative writing at New York University, where she became a tenured professor in 2010. Zadie Smith's work blends humor, intellect, and emotional depth, making her a standout voice in contemporary literature. Her novels often explore multicultural London, generational change, and the messy, beautiful contradictions of modern life, perfect for readers who love character-driven, socially observant fiction. I don't know if I like that or not, to be honest. But, I guess I'll find out as I read through her books. About White Teeth itself, this is something I need to start doing more often. I always forget to do it. The publisher was Hamish Hamilton. This book is vintage. I don't know if Hamish Hamilton is a subset of vintage, or if maybe once she got bigger, she switched publishers, or what. Original publication date, January 27th, 2000 in the United Kingdom. The hardcover was 480 pages. About the story, and I'm just stealing the synopsis from bookshop.org. So this is just this doesn't even scratch the surface. So there's a lot that goes on in this book. Zadie Smith's dabbling. Holy moly. Zadie Smith's dazzling debut caught critics grasping for comparisons, deciding on everyone from Charles Dickens to Salman Rushdie to John Irving and Martin Amis. But the truth is that Zadie Smith's voice is remarkably, fluently, and altogether wonderfully her own. At the center of this invigorating novel are two unlikely friends, Archie Jones and Samad Iqbal. Hapless veterans of World War II, Archie and Samad and their families become agents of England's irrevocable transformation. A second marriage to Clara Bowden, a beautiful albeit tooth-challenged Jamaican, half his age, quite literally gives Archie a second lease on life, and produces Irie, a knowing child whose personality doesn't quite match her name, Jamaican for no problem. Samad's late-in-life arranged marriage, he had to wait for his bride to be born, produces twin sons who separate paths, confound Iqbal's every effort to direct them, and a renewed, if selective, submission to his Islamic faith. Now, some of the takeaways, some of the reflections I have with this book, and I have to say, this is a maximalist novel. There's just so much stuff that goes on that it's just impossible to do like a 10-minute video on. It just is. So just know, going into this, it's chaotic. There's a lot going on, and it's not linear either. So there's a lot of bouncing around and all that stuff. So this is kind of what I took away. I'm sure there's a lot more to this book that just went right over my head. Just like I said, there's just so much stuff that's going on in this book. One of the biggest takeaways from White Teeth is how messy and complicated identity is. Zadie shows us characters who are constantly negotiating who they are between cultures, generations, religions, and expectations. No one in this book has a simple, stable sense of self, and that's exactly the point. Identity isn't fixed. It's something you build and rebuild every day. This so many characters, and the narrative gets basically handed off throughout the book to all these different characters, and all these characters are just messed up in their own way. But of course, they're also family and basically adopted family, I guess you could say. So they're all interconnected, and not a single one of them has any of their screws tightly screwed. All their screws are loose, and it's just a chaotic mess. And I don't use the term mess necessarily in a bad way. Another major theme is family and how deeply it shapes us, even when we try to resist it, whether it be the Joneses, the Iqbals, the Chalfins. I never could quite figure out how I was supposed to pronounce their name. I assume it's Chalfin. Whatever. Every family in this novel is wrestling with generational conflict. Parents cling to tradition, children just push back. And somewhere in the middle, everyone is trying to figure out what it means to belong. Like I said, it's just a beautiful mess. The dads in this book are just from a different generation. The mothers are from a different generation. And of course, the kids are from a different generation. So it's like essentially, even though it's father, mother, child, it's essentially three different generations trying to figure out how to coexist. And it's messy. Smith also gives us a multicultural London that's vibrant, chaotic, and imperfect. The novel celebrates the beauty of cultural mixing. It also shows the misunderstandings, frictions, and blind spots that come with it. It's funny, it's sharp, and it's painfully honest about how hard it is for communities to truly understand each other. And it just kind of goes back to like Manoa Larson stuff. It's it kind of seems like that with the mixed cultures, it's kind of hard to find your identity, and it's hard to find where you can fit in. And let's face it, a lot of people aren't all that welcoming. So I imagine it's just, let alone trying just to figure your own crap out, trying to do that while not really having people that you can turn to for support. And it just must be, it must be very difficult. That's all I gotta say. I don't know. It must be very difficult. Another takeaway is how ideologies, whether scientific, religious, or political, can become traps. Characters cling too tightly to to certainly end up distorting their relationships and losing sight of the people around them. And you see that especially today. It's just, the political landscapes just tear people apart. The ideologies that, just because, and it's hive brain, right? Because, you watch Fox News enough, you're going to believe everything that's on there. If you watch CNN enough, you're going to believe everything's on there. It just kind of depends on, which news you gravitate towards, whether, how your ideology falls. And it's literally tearing people apart, or families apart. They just cannot stand to be around each other because essentially they watch this news and they watch that news and they believe everything that they hear, instead of, like when I want to go find something, when I want to go find something in the news, I usually watch from a bunch of different sources, and then hope, basically the overlap is, okay, well, this is probably the truth. Whereas the stuff that doesn't overlap and just kind of sits on the fringes, that's that, I just kind of toss that aside. But, I have family members who are, diehard, Fox Newsers, and I have family members who are diehard CNNers. And I just, it's just, it's sad. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. Enough of that. And finally, White Teeth reminds us that history never really stays in the past. Trauma, migration, war, and family secrets echoes across the generations. Even when characters try to outrun their histories, those histories shape their choices in ways they don't always see. And yeah, I'm sure we all can think of a few things that we could take back in our life, and sadly we can't. So you just kind of have to grow and learn from it and move on, and the more you try to just ignore it and stomp it down, the worse it becomes. So finally, my overall thoughts on the book. Overall, White Teeth is an interesting, though sometimes frustrating story. The cops are after you, Apollo. Because the narrative shifts so often from one character to another, I found it hard to form a strong connection with any single person. That made certain sections, especially the ones I wasn't actually drawn to, feel a bit harder to push through. It's a maximalist novel, so you really have to stay engaged with it, which can be, again, quite difficult if you're just not clicking with the details of that section. So like the chapters that I didn't particularly care about, like the Irie's trip to the beauty shop or the Chalflins in her garden, quickly became a slog. I also found myself thrown off by Clara's sudden loss of her Jamaican accent. For a good chunk, so embarrassing amount of the story. I didn't even realize it was the same Clara. And actually, I kind of forgot her name was Clara because, again, the story gets thrown around so much, characters just kind of get forgotten about for long periods. And then you have to try to remember. It took me about probably 3-ish weeks to read this because I read it pretty slow. I kind of just read it during my breaks at work. So I really suggest, if you are going to read this, try to make it so you can read it over a few days to try to keep these characters fresh in your mind. That'll help you out a ton. Whereas, I might not have seen a character in there for, a week and a half of reading it and trying to remember, do I know this person and what, who are they? But with all the jumps, with Clara's sudden loss of her accent, I just assume that with all the jumps and the timeline, it just simply faded away, that we weren't there to witness it. Or again, maybe it was mentioned and I just completely, glazed over me. I don't know. That was kind of confusing. Despite the frustrations, the story does build upon itself, and even when it doesn't feel like it does come together in a surprisingly satisfying way in the end. There are moments where I question my decisions to read this book and to read all of Zadie Smith's fiction, because I'm trying to do the Zadie Smith project where I read all of her fiction. I don't know about her nonfiction yet. I don't even know if I can get it all. It might be. I don't want to spend $10 for a back issue of a magazine to read a couple page essay. So we'll see. But anyway, so I was there were moments where I was questioning my decision because I thought, me and maximalist novels don't typically get along very well just because I can't remember all the stuff and I often get overwhelmed. But I do say overall, I generally enjoyed my journey through these families' chaotic and intertwined lives, and I'm glad I read it, and I'm glad I got through the sloggy parts because I'm going to be truthful. There was more than one time where I'm like, I'm going to DNF this. Saw it through the end, and I was pleasantly surprised by the ending, and I'm glad that I did get through it. So my my suggestion to you is, even if there are parts that you're like, I want to give up, try to see them through. I think if you can get through the halfway point and you were enjoying a good chunk of it, I think it's worth it to see it through to get to the payoff. If you get it within a 50 pages of it, it's not clicking with you, I would say by then just get rid of it and move on to the next book, because you're probably not going to enjoy your time with it. But it really is about the halfway point where basically if you've read it from the beginning to say the hurricane, I really, really enjoyed it. Then there was a good chunk in there where it was a lot, where it was like Irie's beauty shop visit and the Chalfins. I really didn't like the Chalfins and their parts of the story. And I think there's another part where there was a random past generation that I wasn't getting along with. Obviously, I must have just kind of my eyes glazed over during that session because I really don't remember parts of it, or if it was even a thing. To be honest, I just vaguely remember there was like we jumped back to like the 19th century for a little bit, right? Let me look real quick. Make sure I'm not talking completely on my rear end. Yeah, so we jumped back to the 1850s at some point, but I don't remember. I thought it was later on in the book. I don't know. I'm rambling. If you can handle maximalist postmodern stuff, give White Teeth a try. If postmodern maximalist stuff is not your cup of tea, skip it. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. Good job, Zadie. I am looking forward to moving on to your next book, which I have no idea. Was it? I'm not even want to guess which one it is. I think it's like Autograph Man or something like that. Um, just I wasn't going to guess, and then I guessed. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this journey. So that's it for this one, peeps. If you've read this story, let me know down below what I got right, what I got wrong. Again, I'm sorry if you're coming to this hoping for a deep dive. This just wasn't your place, and it's not something I was going to be good at doing anyway. Let's be real. There are plenty of other people that do deep dives of this story on the U of Tubes that do a way better job than I ever could. So go watch their video. Cheers, peeps.